What's happening, everybody? Justin, Bridgewater's finest on YouTube, Blockbuster_guy on Twitter, fueled as always by the incredible folks at NerdTees, and welcome to week 21, the final week of the CFL regular season for the 2022 CFL season. The postseason is right around the corner just next week with the East and West semifinals, but we've still got some business to take care of here. The final week of the CFL regular season. Obviously, we're back in the friendly confines here as my vacation has concluded, and hopefully being back in the friendly confines means that the results are a little bit friendlier towards us this week. Last week, honestly, straight up and against the spread, I was fine, and I gave it all back on the totals. So I was 2-2 straight up, 2-2 against the spread, and whiffed on the totals. 0-4. Just a brutal performance trying to pick the totals last week. It wound up being 4-8. I got half pointed on one of them, and on another one, I was 40 seconds away from hitting my under, and then Mario Alford ran a punt return back for a touchdown in a game where the final score was, or the final result was not in question. So I was that close to 2-2, half pointed on one, 44 seconds away from another. C'est la vie, sometimes it happens. So 4-8 last week drops me to 129 and 102 on the season overall, 49 and 28 straight up, and 46 and 31 against the spread. I'm not going to argue with those numbers, but obviously I just gave so much back this year on the totals, but we're going to fix that this week. We're going to do a little work towards fixing that this week. Let's temper expectations. CFL fantasy for last week, I did all right, 82.3 points total, and that was led by my MVP, which was Hamilton quarterback Dane Evans. 220 passing yards. He did not throw a touchdown, but did have 21 rush yards on 5 carries and 2 rushing touchdowns, which contributed the bulk of his 20.9 fantasy points, was good enough to win my MVP last week. So has me sitting exactly at 1,711 fantasy points on the season. And just to kind of give you an impression of how I've progressed as a CFL fantasy player, last season, and I just rewatched my week 16 episode from last year, which was the last week of last year's regular season, I was pushing to get into the top 800 overall. That was my goal. That was what I was looking to do. This year, I have a legitimate shot at the top 350 overall. So I have significantly improved in CFL fantasy this year, and I'm looking to take big steps into next year as well. I'm not going to set a goal as we stand right now, but by the beginning of next year, I'll have a goal in mind for sure, but definitely have improved in this area, which is nice. In the official Atlantic Schooners CFL Fantasy Football League, I have moved back up into 8th place out of 50. The leader now has 1,781, so I'm trailing first place by exactly 70 points. I trail 5th place by 29, which means I did lose a little more than 6.5 points. And I actually lost ground on the team in 10th place behind me, now only leading 10th place by 12.6. So very, very, very constricted there inside the top 10. A lot can happen where we're so bunched up. I'm not going to give you my week 21 roster for CFL Fantasy until the end of the episode, and the reason for that is my roster is going to change probably 20 times. This is the single most uncertain week of the CFL season. So we barely know who's going to play. We barely know who might sit or who might not sit. You have an idea of these things, but news comes hot and heavy in the last week of the season. So I'll give you my roster as it stands right now. I'm pretty sure of one player, and that's Winnipeg wide receiver Dalton Schoen. Other than that, the rest of the roster is kind of up for debate. The week 21 slate of games looks like this. The Edmonton Elks do not play this week. They get the bye week to end the season. The BC Lions are in Winnipeg taking on the Bombers. Montreal is in Toronto to take on the Argos. Hamilton is in Ottawa to take on the REDBLACKS. And Saskatchewan closes their season in Calgary against the Stampeders. Now, unlike last season where we still went into the last week of the season with some stakes, with some things to play for in terms of the playoffs, there are no stakes this week at all. Winnipeg's hosting the West Final. Toronto's hosting the East Final. We know Calgary's going to BC in the West, and we know Hamilton's going to Montreal in the East. Nothing can change with the results of what happens this week. In a way, that lends an air of certainty to some things, but the CFL, it is great at many things. One of the things it's great at is holding its secrets close to the chest. So there's still a lot that we don't know about what we're going to see this week. So I'll tell you what we're going to do. We're going to do our best. That's about all you can ask in the last week of the season. We are going to do our best with the information that we have available to us, what we can glean from other things, and try to make a go at this thing. So we'll start with that BC and Winnipeg game. What we do know about that one is for the Lions, there will be no Brian Burnham. He's already been ruled out for this game. Lucky Whitehead, we know, is in and will be playing in this game. And I know that by virtue of the fact that, I don't know, maybe 10 minutes before I started recording this, the Lions and the Bombers actually posted their starting lineups. So we have some certainty there because that game takes place tomorrow. We won't really know about the other teams until a little bit later, but at the very least, we know about the Lions and the Bombers. For the Bombers, no Nick Dembski. He has been ruled out for this game. And Drew Wolotarski, Greg Ellingson, and Jackson Jeffcoat, who were initially questionable, are all going to be in the lineup in this game. And again, there's no real reason for the Bombers to feel compelled to rest players because they know they're going to get that bye week next week before the West Final. You can play your full complement of players this week knowing that you have a week of rest coming next week. What we also know is that Nathan Rourke will be getting the start for the BC Lions. So obviously Rourke was off to an all-time great start to this CFL season, and obviously got taken away from him back in, what was it? I can't remember exactly which week it was, but I mean, he was off to an incredible start. And then he had that injury, and that's a bad injury. Am I the bad guy for thinking this is a bad idea? Like, if he's healthy, does Nathan Rourke deserve to be the starting quarterback of the BC Lions in a game that matters? Hell yes, he does. You do anything you can. You cannot send Vernon Adams on a rocket fast enough back to the bench. The game matters to Nathan Rourke. Like, the game matters in a big, bad way to Nathan Rourke, and I wouldn't want to take that away from him. But in terms of the BC Lions and their quest to win the Grey Cup, this game is meaningless. You can't improve your position. You can't lose positioning. You can't change who you're going to play next week. None of it matters. My biggest fear, and I'm not going to fully verbally put it out there into the world, but what if? We know how bad that injury is. What if? It doesn't take very much. What if? So Rourke is going to start. I would expect to see Vernon Adams in this game at some point. And ditto for the Bombers. We know Zach Collaros is going to get the start. Might we see some Drew Brown in this game? Might we see maybe Collaros plays the first 3 quarters and then sits down and has Drew Brown play the rest of the way? It's entirely possible. At the very least, we know who's going to be starting. I've got to take the Bombers in this one. I think they'll have their full complement of players in this game longer. I would fully expect the BC Lions to start resting starters maybe in the second half. Like, just give them the rep of still preparing for the game, starting the game, playing some of the game, and then sitting them down and getting some rest ahead of the matchup with Calgary next week. So I gotta like the Bombers here. We're gonna go with Winnipeg in Winnipeg to get the win here over BC. On the line, Winnipeg is favored by 4 points at home. I'm going to go ahead and lay those points, Winnipeg -4. Again, close to a full contingent in this game versus a team that likely in the second half will start resting some of their starters. Winnipeg is more than capable of covering this number. So let's lay the 4 points on the Bombers. Total in this game is 51.5 points. It is the biggest total of the week, which might be a weird thing when you think about these are the top 2 scoring defenses in the CFL this year. But the offenses are both great. The conditions for this game are going to be excellent. Not going to be windy, going to be about 11, 12 degrees by the time this kicks off. excellent conditions to score points. The defenses are both elite, but rest is going to be a factor here. I'm going to take the over on these points. Let's go over 51.5 in Winnipeg, BC. We're going to go Bombers 34, Lions 21, and then the Lions will head home and get ready for Calgary. All right, the Montreal Alouettes in Toronto to take on the Toronto Argos. What we know about this game is somewhat limited. For Montreal, Reggie White and Micah Ah are not participating in practice currently. I would be very surprised to see either of them play in this game. Eugene Lewis isn't in practice either, but he's basically, I believe, being given veteran rest, so I don't think that's an injury situation at all. For Toronto, it's basically all hands on deck, and I would expect to see Chad Kelly potentially either get the start in this game or see significant reps. Now, yes, they're in the same situation as the Bombers. They're in the same situation where they know they don't have to play next week. You got McLeod Bethel-Thompson. He will probably get the start. But I do still expect to see a lot of Chad Kelly in this football game. Maybe from the second half, they have McLeod sit and get ready for the East Final. Why the double standard from me? It's just a feeling. It's an impulse, to be perfectly honest. They could play it exactly the same as Winnipeg's going to play it. But I do expect to see plenty of Chad Kelly in this game for the Argos. I don't think it's going to change the outcome all that much. I really like Toronto in this spot. They're the better team between the two. Yes, they know they've got the rest next week. And yes, Montreal would potentially want to go into that game next week with some momentum, but I kind of expect them to play it the same way I expect BC to play their game, which is in the second half. I think they start rolling back those starters, resting starters, and I think Toronto gets the job done with the better overall roster. So we're going to grab the Argos here at home to get the win over Montreal. On the line, Toronto is favored by 3 points here as the home favorite. I like them to win. It's the highest end of my relatively small price to pay, but I'm going to go ahead and lay those points. Same condition as the Bombers. I think maybe Toronto covers this with their last score of the game, but I believe Toronto covers the -3. Total in the game set at 49. Now, this is a situation where I'm actually going to go under on this one. With both of these teams, I believe the defenses are slightly better than the offenses. The conditions are going to be clear, but it is going to be cold. It is going to be under 10 degrees when this game kicks off, and that's in like the height of the afternoon. Like this is in the early window on Saturday. But it's going to be cold, which means it's going to have been cold all night, cold all day. It doesn't lend itself to scoring a ton of points. So I'm going to lean on that and lean on these two defenses and stay under 49 points in Toronto, Montreal. Let's go Argos 24, Alouettes 20. Toronto wins, Toronto covers, and give me the under on the points. But I'm going to take this opportunity now, as I always do, to shout out my great friends and sponsors at Nerd Teas and Coffee Bean at nerdteas.ca. Now, nerdteas.ca is where you need to go to find dozens and dozens of incredible loose leaf tea blends, tea accessories, and now dozens of great coffee blends as well. So it doesn't matter how you like your hot drink, nerdteas.ca has got you covered, and I've got you covered with my promo code, which is BWFinest. That is going to save you 15% at checkout. You're going to get free shipping in Canada on any order over $100, and you're also going to get a great conversion rate on the US dollar if you're one of my US viewers who supports the CFL, and if you are, big thumbs up. Today's blend is a stalwart, the Golden Apple Cinnamon. It's been one of my favorite for a long time. It's also low caffeine, so you're not going to drive yourself crazy by injecting caffeine straight into your veins like you do with a lot of other teas and coffees and what have you. It's an excellent blend. It's one of my favorites, but you can find a bunch of incredible options on nerdteas.ca. Use that promo code BWFinest, get you 15%, get your free shipping, find yourself something to love, or find someone you love something to love. You can do it at nerdteas.ca. And now we're going to head into the back half of the week. The Hamilton Ticats in Ottawa taking on the REDBLACKS. What we know about this so far from the practice reports, both Dane Evans and Wes Hills are both practicing in full. I would expect both of them to play at some point in this game. For Ottawa, it's been kind of the same as we've seen the last few weeks. William Powell, Patrick Levels, Abdul Kana now, Jackson Bennett, and Devontae Dedmon. None of them are participating in practice. It's worth mentioning Jalen Acklin is back to participating in practice in full. I'm going to tag him as questionable in this game, but he is back to fully practicing. Dane Evans and Matt Schiltz will split reps for the Ticats in this game. The Ticats have basically all but already announced that. So split reps for the quarterbacks. You don't necessarily love it. What we do have is some certainty for the Red Blacks at quarterback, which is that Caleb Evans will be getting the start for this final game for the Red Blacks this season. To me, it's the right move. I've been talking about it a lot of the season. I think Caleb Evans is the best quarterback in that QB room. Let me put it to you this way. The Ottawa REDBLACKS have scored 29, just 29, offensive touchdowns this season. Caleb Evans has accounted for 19 of them. Only 4 through the air, but 15 rushing touchdowns on the season, a new CFL record for Caleb Evans. They call him the king for a reason, folks. He is the biggest offensive weapon on that entire roster, and in my opinion, deserves to be the starting quarterback. Now, Jeremiah Masoli may have something to say about that when he's healthy, and when he's healthy, I think Masoli is the better quarterback. But as of right now, the conditions they're currently playing under, to me, it's Caleb Evans, and I'm glad to see him getting the start. I am still going to go with the Hamilton Ticats here, even though they are splitting reps at quarterback, and even though resting will certainly come into play in this game, because of course they're traveling to Montreal for the East semifinal next week, but the Ticats have the better roster. Ottawa's been playing better the last few weeks, with, I guess, a reduction of expectation, I guess, you can call it that, but they have been playing better the last couple of weeks, but in my opinion, Hamilton needs this game. I think Hamilton needs this game for the momentum, for the confidence boost to go into Montreal and potentially have a shot against the Alouettes. So I'm going to give this game to Hamilton. I think they need it more. Let's take the Ticats on the road in Ottawa to beat the REDBLACKS. Now on the line, the REDBLACKS are taking 1.5 points here as a marginal home dog. I've taken Hamilton to win. It's a small price to pay. I'll lay the 1.5. Once again, this is either a 2-0 or an 0-2 game. There's really not much in between. Total in the game set at 49 points. Now, as a reminder, these two teams just played each other and put up 57 in Hamilton. I do think this is pretty well the perfect number, but they're going to be playing under ideal conditions, and with Caleb Evans, their more dangerous quarterback starting, I'm going to lean over on this one. Let's go over 49 points in Hamilton, Ottawa. And why mess with a good thing? They just played last week. The final score was 30-27. Let's go 30-27 for the Hamilton Ticats. They get the win again and take that momentum into the postseason. And we'll go to the last game of the week. Saskatchewan Roughriders in Calgary taking on the Stampeders. This could very well be the last game in Riders Green for Cody Fajardo. He's a free agent at the end of the season. He was benched last week in favor of Mason Fine, a bit of a shocker. We don't know who the starting quarterback is going to be in this game. I would expect you're probably going to see both of them in some configuration, but likely Fajardo's last game in Saskatchewan, and that's, the end of a little bit of an era there for the Riders. Fajardo was good for them for a number of years. What we do know, Kyron Moore not participating in practice, would be very surprised to see him out there this week. And a couple of other pieces, AC Leonard and Nick Marshall, they're only being given veteran rest. So I figure both of them will probably play, but I'd be very surprised if we saw Kyron Moore in the season finale. For Calgary, they got a litany of players who had not been practicing before, who are now back to practicing in full. They include Malik Henry, Luther Hakunavanu, Kamar Jordan is back to practicing in full, Peyton Logan, Titus Wall. I would expect all of these players to play in some form or fashion this week. Probably not full games, especially with Wall, who's been dealing with an injury for a while. Kamar Jordan has been off for a while. I would expect them to kind of phase in and out of the game, maybe sit for the second half like we've been talking about. One of the more interesting components to this game for me is who's going to start at quarterback for the Stamps. You could put Jake Mayer out there. He's been playing most of the season. But you got Bo Levi Mitchell on the bench there, and this is a game that does not matter for you Why not have Bo play? This could be Bo's last regular season game as a Calgary Stampeder. I would like to see Bo Levi Mitchell get the start and play most of this game. You can phase Mare in and out here and there, kind of like they've been doing over the last couple of years, but I would really like to see Bo Levi Mitchell get the start in this one. Now, this is the only game this week where I'm actually going to hedge my bets. I like the Calgary Stampeders to win this game. They need the momentum going into the postseason. Saski's got nothing to play for other than, of course, professional pride. So we could very well see that, and we could see Saski come up and get the win here. But I like Calgary to win. I'm going to take the Riders with the points, though. On the line, Saski is taking plus 5.5 here as a road dog. I just don't see any reason for Calgary to blow the Riders out. And especially if they start resting players into the second half, I could very easily see a backdoor cover here. So we're going to insulate against that and take the points with the Saskatchewan Roughriders plus 5.5. Total in the game set at 49 points. And once again, like I mentioned, no reason for a blowout here. This game is going to be cold by kickoff. Like we were talking about with Toronto and Montreal, this game's going to be like 4 or 5 degrees when it kicks off. And this is in the late window on Saturday, which means it's only going to get colder. I don't think that's conducive to a ton of points. So we're going to stick under on this one, under 49 points in Calgary, Saskatchewan. And we're going to go with the same score as the Toronto game. I'm going to go Calgary 24, Saskatchewan 20. Calgary wins, Riders cover the points, and give me the under. There you go, folks. Those are your picks for the final week of the CFL regular season, week 21. We'll go over them here with you one more time. I've got the Bombers beating the Lions in Winnipeg 34-21. I'm laying the -4 on Winnipeg in a game that goes over 51.5 points. I got the Toronto Argos beating the Montreal Alouettes 24-20 in Toronto. I'm laying the -3 with the Argos in a game that stays under the 49-point total. I got the Hamilton Ticats in Ottawa beating the REDBLACKS 30-27. I'm laying the -1.5 on Hamilton in a game that goes over 49 points. And I got the Calgary Stampeders in Calgary beating Saskatchewan 24-20. I'm taking the plus 5.5 on the Road Riders in a game that stays under 49 points. The CFL regular season closes itself out this weekend. I've had such an incredible time doing this show again this season. Season 4, of course, for the CFL show will 1000% be back next year. Be back and better than ever, of course. But, of course, we've still got the playoffs. So this season's not over yet by a long shot. We've still got the semifinals, the final weeks, and all the way up to this year's Grey Cup. I hope you'll be joining me for all of those. That's it for me, Justin, Bridgewater's Finest on YouTube, Blockbuster_guy on Twitter, fueled as always by the incredible folks at NerdTees. I hope the audio sounds all right in this one. We will see you again next week for the East and West semifinals, where we will have the Calgary Stampeders in BC and the Hamilton Ticats in Montreal.